Hey dudes, and welcome back to The Bants. As always, I am your host, The Bants, and it's the middle of the week, so it's time for our second What's Happening in Fashion this week, so let's just get right into it. And first up, as always, we have our headlines for the day. And in our first headline, Scott Sternberg is back once again, and this time he's brought us a new brand, this time titled Entireworld. And I don't really know how to feel about it. And if the name Scott Sternberg kind of rings a bell, but you can't really place it, let me place it for you. Sternberg is the man behind the very well-known and very renowned contemporary brand Band of Outsiders, although obviously he's no longer with that company as he's doing this one. Now, along with introducing the brand, he did show off a couple pieces from the first season, as well as releasing a video kind of with a background and a about of, along with an introduction of the brand, and I can't say it was really anything interesting. Now, that might sound a little bit harsh, but let me kind of explain why I feel this way. It's because in the video he talks a little bit about why he'd want to start a new brand outside of Band of Outsiders, even though, you know, he's no longer with the brand. And he kind of dives into, he wants to see more color in menswear, more fabrics, and he really just enjoys like the history and the pop culture references that go behind fashion. And that honestly kind of just seems like more of the same. And the reason I say that is if you go on the Band of Outsiders About Us page right now, they pretty much reference all those things. They reference history, they reference pop art, except not pop culture, and they also obviously talk about fabrics as well. So the only thing that he's really adding to this brand that supposedly doesn't exist in Band of Outsiders is color, which is obviously not the case. So basically what I'm trying to get across here is what Sternberg is trying to sell is just Band of Outsiders 2.0. And obviously this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, take a look back at Band of Outsiders through its first decade. I mean, he has an amazing track record when it comes to fashion. And if he really does want to emphasize more color, more pop culture, now is definitely time to do it, because we are in the height of maximalism right now, and you can definitely get away with it more now than you could, say, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. So with all that said, in all honesty, best of luck, Scott. I mean, I really do hope that it works out a little bit better for you this time, and I really like to see what happens next for Band of Outsiders 2.0, I mean Entireworld. And our second headline of the day is brought to you by Vetements. And ooh, is this a good one. So recently, High Snobiety came out with an article, which I will link down below, talking to a myriad of anonymous sources all across Europe, North America, and Asia, talking about how basically Vetements is dead. Thank God it is finally happening. Thank you. Fuck yeah. And they do go into some of the details why, such as, you know, the hype is really gone and they're not selling as much as they used to, so some of it's going on sale, or they're just pulling back on stock in general, and the fact that it's kind of too expensive too. And they do really bring up some legitimate points about fashion in general. And I absolutely love the inclusion of the Mark Bain tidbit, which basically goes back over some of the very first interviews that Denma did, which, if you remember, he said that if something goes on sale in store, it's either A, overproduced, or B, you failed as a brand. And, you know, I guess Denma should be taking his own words seriously. Now, obviously, the Vetements team was not so happy about this article and immediately responded back by calling it fake news, like fucking really, and also had the WWD talk to some of the bigger fashion houses, department stores such as Saks Fifth Avenue, explaining that they are not losing steam in their departments by any means. And although that might necessarily be true, I do kind of have to call out bullshit on that, mainly just because when you're talking about a big luxury department store like Saks, of course you can push all your product out of the stores. I mean, If somebody's looking for Vetements and they don't have it at your store, then you can ship it to another store, or you can have people just push the product until it sells. I mean, with the amount of foot traffic that Saks get, it shouldn't be that difficult. But when you're talking smaller stores and smaller boutiques, then of course you're gonna have problems selling Vetements. But that's not even the best part about this story. The best part is Denma's response on Instagram, where he put out a long, wordy paragraph, but all of it can be summed up in one sentence that is pretty much near towards the bottom, and that is that he says, "Fashion is not about hype." Now I'm gonna repeat that again real slow for everyone that didn't catch that the first time. Denma, the man whose really only claim to fame in fashion is hype, said fashion is not about hype. I have no words. You couldn't write a more retarded statement. It's just beautiful. It's just fucking beautiful. But with that said, I totally understand why Denma has to put out something like this, because God knows when somebody says the hype is dead, that's already a downtick movement for your brand, and God knows he's trying to save it. But you know what, dude? It's too late. Vetements is dead, and there's nothing you can do to save it. Thank fucking God. I would say don't let the hype door hit you on the way out, but remember, fashion's not about hype, right? Alright guys, and with that, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, well-renowned artist Kaws is back in art news with a couple different stories. The first of being that he has just opened his newest gallery exhibit in Tokyo, so if you want to see some images from that, I definitely check those out. And secondly, it was announced that he just got a chance to install some permanent sculptures on some skyscrapers in China, both of the natural gray companion and a blue BFF. So if you want to see some photos of them installing those, or the after effects too, definitely check that out as well. Then James Jarvis just announced his newest exhibit, which is now currently running in Hong Kong, and although there aren't many images up right now, be on the lookout for those in the near future. And lastly, rising star artist Felipe Pantone just opened up his newest gallery exhibit, this time in Paris, France. So if you want to check out some of his newest works, I definitely check out the gallery here as well. Alright, and now moving on into fashion news. Brands Sasquatchfabrix, Beams, and legendary recording company Ninja Tune came together for a really uninspected collaboration, and overall, I really enjoyed it. Now you can really divide this collaboration into two definitive sections, and that is one section which has some very minimal yet experimental pieces, and one section that has some very just streetwear heavy graphic pieces. And as much as I really enjoy those more minimalistic experimental pieces, mainly just due to their different uses of fabrics and different uses of detailing, they don't really feel too much Ninja Tune collaborated. It really feels more like just a Sasquatchfabrix Beams collaboration. It's not cohesive with the rest, but it is still very nice. But on the other hand, the very streetwear-esque, very graphic pieces, I really do enjoy. I think the graphics are really nice. I think they're very interesting, and they really do hold true to Ninja Tune's aesthetic. Although I do think on a couple pieces they are a little too oversaturated. But either way, if you do find yourself a fan of any of these three brands, I would definitely at least give this a look. There are some interesting pieces, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Then opening Ceremoney and Columbia came together once again for their newest collaboration, and I think it's pretty decent overall. As expected with any opening Ceremoney collaboration, it's bright and vibrant and maximalized to all hell, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Then Columbia brings in a little bit of their technical aesthetic as well as some of their silhouetting, and the mix of just these amazing colors and patterns along with some technical gear, it's really refreshing and really different, and I really enjoy it. And all I really gotta say is thank God it's not another fucking North Face collaboration. Then Bape Diffusion line, Mr. Bathing Ape, showed off their newest Spring/Summer 2018 lookbook, and unfortunately, it's just not doing it for me. When Nigo first started Mr. Bathing Ape, it was his attempt at doing something a little bit more scaled back, minimalistic, classical, I would even argue contemporary, and although they do kind of get that aesthetic here, some of the detailing just kills it in the worst kind of way. Like, I really do think some of the embroideries here are very interesting and very playful, which really goes back to that Nigo aesthetic. But at the same time, if it's done poorly, like it is unfortunately here on a couple pieces, it really comes off more as just kind of not necessarily trashy, but cheap. And when you're talking about something as expensive as Mr. Bathing Ape, that's the last thing you want to do. So as much as I really do enjoy some of these pieces and really enjoy the idea, for next time, that aesthetic really needs to be worked out, otherwise this brand's gonna just sink even lower, unfortunately. Then Boramy Viguier showed off their debut collection in their Fall/Winter 2018 runway show, and I'll definitely keep my eye out for them, I guess you could say. At first glance, I really did think this show was going to be interesting, but the more I got into it, I realized I was kind of thrown for a loop, and that's because of the headpieces, the hoods, whatever you want to call them. Definitely the most interesting part about the show, unfortunately, and it's just such a letdown. But aside from that, I do really have to commend the new brand for the really solid runway overall. I mean, yes, it's not really breaking the molds in any aspects, but when it comes to some solid contemporary pieces and some solid tech pieces and even some solid rain gear, if you want to call it that for lack of a better term, it really all works here. Aside from the fact that there's some nice colors and some nice fabrics, all the technical details, all the other patterns, really well done. Like, I can't really complain about anything. It's, once again, not the most interesting thing in the world, unfortunately, but it really is solid. Like, solid is definitely the word of the day. And that's really why I do have to commend the young brand, because coming out of the gates, having a debut show that's this consistently good is really par the course. It's not that common. So if nothing else, really great first showing. I wish you guys the best of luck, and I definitely will keep you guys on my radar for your next show, so good luck until then. Alright, and lastly, let's move on to our articles for the day. And first up, Put This On put out a very interesting and thought-provoking article about why they believe clothes matter, and they talk about some things that famous designers have said or written about, and they go into a little bit more of the psychological, and you could even argue the philosophical side of wearing clothes and what fashion actually means. So if that sort of thing interests you, or if you've always kind of wondered why you wear the things you wear, maybe give this article a read. Then SCMP put out a very neat article on the LVMH prize, and they talk about the creator of the contest as well as one of the past winners from last year, about more along the lines of an introduction to what the contest is, what the prize is about, and what you really earn from winning it. And I think if you're a young fashion designer, or if you've ever thought about getting into fashion, especially more high-end fashion, not necessarily like luxury fashion, but just nicer fashion than like streetwear, this is definitely worth reading, and I think it's very inspiring and might also kind of put you in an idea of where to go in the future, I guess you could say. So definitely worth checking out. Then Heddles put out a brief yet informative article on what Kudu leather is. So once again, in the course of talking about leathers that we have been talking about in the last couple weeks, if you've been interested in those, definitely add this to your reading list. And lastly, Grail put out another nice history of, but instead of it being a brand or a designer this time, it's a brief history of the MLB uniform. So if you've ever been interested in kind of sportswear, but more on the heritage side, definitely check this out. All right, guys, and with that, we've reached the end of our second whiff for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed. And as always, if you want to read any of the articles I discussed today or want to see any of the images that I didn't include, links as always are in the description down below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching these videos and supporting this channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I always appreciate it. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk fashion in general, feel free to hit me up in the comments down below. I'm always willing to talk fashion. And with that, guys, I hope you have a... And with that, guys, thank you once again, as always. I hope you guys have a good couple of days until I see you next. And as always, until next time.